before we go any further, I do want to get into Sam and what you do, and a lot of things that you do have been activism and arts promotion, and when I introduced you and Mike some years back, when you came to New York, you were actually going to the UN to tell them about themselves. I'd like to get to you and your, what you're working on now and where you kind of come from.
Yeah, so I'm Aboriginal Australian, and I'm from a very sort of small nation up in the northwest of Western Australia, which, compared to living in Los Angeles, is a completely counter reality. It's 28 families in a very small community, on the outskirts of a very small town, in a country whose population is smaller than the whole of the state of California. So, we're talking about kind of minute numbers, but I have been working in the arts for a very long time. I'd say I was sort of born into it because I take more of a cultural standpoint on the arts, not being othered. And so it sort of infiltrates, as Mike said, left-handed, left and right brain kind of functioning together to bring a kind of even sensibility about it. But when there are injustices that are happening, especially within Australia, within the Aboriginal space, I tend to stand up and hold space for other people to come forward. And often that may be to counter violence from the government, as what happened in 2015 when I mounted the SOS Blak Australia campaign, or it could be in the form of just telling our story better, which is why I founded Australia's Blak History. Aboriginal people in Australia, just to give context, are Black people. We took the C out of the BLACK and started to own our own lane in that space, to start to reclaim more narrative around how, kind of pan-indigenous space we wanted to be defined, but we also see ourselves in our tribal nationhood. So I would say I'm from the Nyikina nation, for example. And so, founding Blak History Month in Australia was really to start to honour that these narratives exist around the world, that there's a number of hidden figures in our stories that never are brought forward. And I was able to have the honour of discovery and finding a lot of hidden figures in Australia's history that were Aboriginal people who had some of the most incredible acts of achievement that were unrecognised. So that's been a 14-year process of love so far, and it will continue. It's something that I'm just absolutely committed to. But in many respects, the kind of gravitational pull has been to arts. I've worked in publishing and theatre. I also then ended up into festivals and events. And so that's sort of where I'm at here in LA at the minute, and working on some really beautiful projects. One of them is to embed a festival into the LA County Fair, with the view to kind of roll that out to the fairgrounds around the world, but also have space for independent artists who are often on the outer of a big kind of monopoly of, two key players in the industry nationally, for example. Where do they get their kind of early entry starting point? And so identifying that there is an opportunity through a ready-made audience. It just happens to be the 100th anniversary of the LA County Fair. And also to see that a lot of the major festivals in the world tend to bring a fair to them. So we thought, why don't we bring the festival back to the fair? We've had 200 artists involved. We're in our last week coming up. And then once that concludes, I'm working on the launch of the 6th Street Viaduct, the 6th Street Bridge in downtown Los Angeles as it reopens. And that was one that you would, I would say it's probably the most credited bridge, the former 6th Street Bridge. It's been in everything from Grease to the Terminator to, Madonna's Borderline video, showing my age. But it's finding myself at the seat of the history of Los Angeles in 2022, which I'm finding really fascinating, to be able to bring the Tongva Nation, the indigenous owners here, their story forward in these processes as well, is something as an Indigenous Australian I've committed to, so that we don't lose the agency of the people of Turtle Island. It's been a really exciting time to be here, but it's also been a very challenging time, as we all know, because of global pandemics and new systems in place and a lot of conflict abroad, and just that dynamic of how do you all re-emerge outside on the other end of a pandemic. So they're some of the kind of key things I've been up to as of late.
Always into a lot of things going on there. And I mean, you said you had a bunch of artists that came out, and you got two artists right here. I don't recall getting an invite. Did you, Mike?
Might have got lost in the mail. I'll have to check again when I get back later.
Yeah, must have
It's
been.
coming.
So